João Almeida, the great Portuguese star who, on stage 8 of the Vuelta España, was performing at a very low level, has abandoned the Spanish round due to the cursed COVID-19 that has claimed so many hard-working victims in the Sonia Duval team. A team which now only has the baby Mexican bull as a possible contender for the final red jersey. A bad situation for Moonlight Matchin, for he now must meet with Dracula Gianetti to renew his contract. Let's hope that the exhibition yesterday by the young Spaniard Pablo Torres can act as a counterbalance so that we can continue to enjoy the best ball duo since our friend of the channel Bjarne Riis and the Chicken Rasmussen formed the Danish team, because it's always Danish, the mythical CSC. Not far from Granada, the beautiful Nazareth city where today's Vuelta España stage ended, close to the Mediterranean Sea, another superhero was preparing for the European Cycling Championships. You can see him in this beautiful postcard image on the beach. It's the friend of Stefano Cecchini and the reigning world champion, Mathieu van der Poel. The son and grandson of dopers is preparing with the same intensity with which in March he prepared for the assault on 2 cycling monuments. And this time he's preparing with a very special guest, Focus in Evenepoel, his neighbour and personal friend, who also hopes to triumph. But in the World Championships weeks later, undoubtedly 2 legendary events are waiting for us with such monsters on the start line. Subscribe to watch them on this humble channel, and also follow your uncle's cycling highlights on his new Twitter, @UncleCycling. Now let's move on to analyse one of the most decisive stages of this Vuelta España. 178 kilometres with a mountainous profile in the vicinity of the high-performance centre of Sierra Nevada. Roads which are very familiar to riders of the peloton, for this is where many World Tour teams train at altitude. And this is where they will climb 3 first-category passes, the Puerto del Turche and twice the Alto de Hazallanas. The legendary climb where today's YouTuber and then 42-year-old racing cyclist McDonald's Horner crushed mythical dopers like Berillo or Piti Valverde and even Vincenzo Nibali when he was a client of Michele Ferrari just months before winning the Tour de France. In a legendary interview in Spanglish, Horner insisted that if he had won in the Basque country, why couldn't he win in the Vuelta España? That day he wore the red jersey, and days later he wore it in Madrid. Before today's stage, he still held the record for the climb. It will be interesting to see if it will be surpassed today or not. For the riders, after climbing Hazallanas for the second time, would then have to make a descent to Granada. During yesterday's stage, we saw 2 riders clearly above the rest, the attacking Enric Mas and the Slovenian skier and main favourite to win the Vuelta, Primoz Roglic. Could both of them get close to the whining leader O'Connor and get even closer to the final victory? The day began with the classic heat that is scorching the race in southern Spain, about 40 degrees Celsius. And so a first attack of the beloved Belgian bot was launched, trying no doubt to find a new victory in the mountains, as on Mont Ventoux in the Tour de France 2022. A very large group of 26 riders was formed, and they managed to gain more than 4 minutes of advantage on the peloton before the Puerto del Turche. But right there was when the race was totally dynamited. Moonlight Matchin put to work the already legendary Calippo Soler, whom you can see in this archive image, enjoying his favourite ice cream. No doubt the tactic was to avenge the abandonment of the hard-working Almeida and to help his teammate Adam Yates. Alongside them, yet another teammate, the video game cyclist and poggy hater Jay Vine, and the dangerous Norwegian cancer evader Torstein Troen, Tramadolito Quintana's hater and well-ranked in the overall David Gaudu with a teammate, Stefan Kung. There was Kern Farmer's promising Spaniard Pablo Castrillo, and Orica's irregular Australian climber Chris Harper, among others. Behind, the king of the minions, having seen several riders of the doped hipsters team escape ahead, decided to launch an attack at the start of the Puerto del Turche. An attack that many described as kamikaze, but his uncle Cycling Highlights had already warned everyone who'd listened that this Ecuadorian has a lot of balls. And so it was not surprising to see how he single-handedly worried the bunch, to such an extent that the Red Bull team, with the Slovenian skier wearing a King of the Mountains jersey for the first time in his career, was losing several of its riders, such as Daddy Martinez. Filippo Soler's pace was so high that not only did he increase his lead over the peloton by a minute, but he smashed the vast majority of the 26 escapees, and only his teammates and the aforementioned top climbers were able to keep up with the Andorran's Colnago. Meanwhile, former Olympic champion Richie Carapaz was more than 2 minutes ahead of the main peloton. Could he pull off a surprise? Oh, without a doubt, the stage was already exciting, and this was before the first ascent to the Hazallanas. There it was that Filippo Soler stopped working, and then quickly riders like Troan or Harper waved goodbye to their stage chances. The video game cyclist Vine went to work to maintain the gap against a bunch of favourites, where only Rogler's Red Bull team was working, with non-nationality Vlasov and Anti-Pogačar Lipovic at his service. However, it was the king of the minions who, at pace and overtaking all kinds of cyclists, was gradually approaching the head of the race and pulling away from the pack of favourites, taking 3 minutes over them in an exhibition of more than 30 kilometres with the air in his face. With 56 kilometres to go, it was the twin brother of the doper Simon Yates who then left behind Gaudu and his teammate Vine, going on solo on the hardest ramps of the Hazallanas. Obviously, at over 9 minutes in the general classification, he wasn't seen as that much of a threat. But the Saunier Duval team show was once again epic, leaving the field of favourites to just 14 riders, almost 5 minutes apart, with that attack alone. Adam Yates crossed the Hazallanas in the lead, with total confidence and extreme security, 1 minute and 44 seconds ahead of the king of the minions, for he crowned with the promising Spaniard Castrillo on his wheel. Despite the work of Anti-Pogačar Lipovic behind, the bunch lost another 30 seconds to Yates and came in 5.5 minutes behind the Brit, of course with the whining O'Connor amongst the 14 chosen ones. During the descent and the terrain towards the second ascent of the Hazallanas, it seemed that the Saunier spirit of the Slovenian alien, or of Pablo Torres, or even of the distant historical Cobra Rico, was possessing the tiny body of Yates, increasing his advantage another minute over the peloton, a new exhibition of Dracula Gianetti's men. Could he now overtake the skier in the general classification? Not looking at all tired on the climb, despite having crashed a few days earlier, in true Slovenian alien style, Adam Yates stood up on his bike and pedalled like an angel. While behind, the king of the minions caught up with the rest of the escapees and discarded Gaudu like a cigarette butt. When the peloton reached the base of the pass, the key moment of the stage arrived, and somehow the anti-Pogačar Lipovic transitioned into the anti-Roglic, imposing such a high pace that he left his own Slovenian teammate extremely tired and even a little bit off the pace. A situation that the attacker Enric Mas took advantage of, and attacked for once in his life, supported by the encouragement of the Spanish fans, and he left behind the group of Rogler and the anti-Rogler and the whining leader O'Connor with his teammate Gal, and the dinosaur Lander, and the Frenchman who trains in Girona, Sivakov, and the local and much affected by the decline of his team, Carlos Rodriguez. Yates crossed the top of the pass with enough points to become the new king of the mountains. 2 minutes ahead of Carapaz and almost 5 minutes ahead of Mas. And Mas it was who was the fastest on the climb today. And still Yates was 6 minutes clear of the leaders group. This show today was impressive, and despite the display of the attacker Mas, his time of ascent was still slower than that of the legendary McDonald's Horner 11 years ago, which was, of course, as you know, totally clean. On the descent, unfortunately, the attacker Mas had several scares and almost fell on a not-too-dangerous corner, albeit a descent with points in excess of 100 kilometers per hour, and this only served to increase his anxiety and panic on the descents, and his distance to Roglic's group was gradually reduced. Adam Yates did again what Poggi had done on Plateau de Bay after the COVID abandonment of the worker Ayuso. This is no doubt the motto of Sergio Palamonte. The breakfast that for some people is very bad, for others is very good. And while the worker Almeida no doubt watched the stage from home, his British teammate crossed the line as the winner in Granada after an attack 55 kilometres from the finish and was warmly congratulated by Dracula Gianetti. One more victory to add to that of the very dangerous Hershey today in the Bretagne Classic. Absolutely unforgettable. The king of the Minions crossed the finish line 1 minute and 38 seconds later, clearly getting closer to the whining O'Connor on the general classification. Behind, the attacking Mas was caught by Rogler's group. This was a day where he attacked to absolutely no avail. The power of the group in these final meters with the new anti-Roglic served to cut up to 2 minutes of the gap to Yates. And the complaining O'Connor came in 3 minutes and 46 seconds behind the winner today. Although no doubt the biggest loser today has been the Slovenian skier. Carapaz is third overall, and Saunier Duval is back in the fight. What more can you ask for? Well, you could take a look at the video on the screen. We're sure you'll love it.